Hi, and welcome back to another episode of the Canary Room. It's season 3. It's episode 12 of the show this year. Coming up on the show today, we've got some biblical weather. So it's since we were last filming, we've had, I think, all 4 seasons. So we will catch up on that. Thankfully, it hasn't had any impact on the birds at all, or certainly it doesn't seem to have done. We have your favourite features. We have the Redpoll Diaries. Many of you will have seen on the Facebook page some baby Redpolls. Well, Redpoll Diaries never fails to giveth and taketh away. So we'll catch up with those pesky little Redpolls and the Siberian Goldfinches, which have clearly now taken on the mantle of the Redpolls. We've got Bird of the Week as well. We'll see one of the agate mosaics. That's especially for my good friend Julian from Julian's Canary Bird Room, who messaged me in the week saying, I really love the show, but there's too many fifes on it. Well, that's the bird I keep, mate. But I will show you one of the agates this week. It's a really nice bird. One of the agate cocks. We'll have a fife there as well. We'll catch up with the boarders. We are coming towards the end of the season, so we'll have a look around the room as we start to single off some of the hens, start to separate them rather, and put them in flight cages now. So the breeding side of the room is really beginning to wind down now, so we'll catch up on that. No garden birds this week, although I have seen a couple of the goldfinches back, but there will be an epic question time. I must just say some thank yous. Been inundated with messages. I really appreciate that. Question time, as I say, this week is an epic because of the feedback that we've had on our Facebook page for it. So very much appreciate that. So some thank yous. Before we start the show, a huge thank you to Graham Parker, to Rob Elkin, to, of course, Michael Burling, and to Mick and Sue Spare, and many congratulations on your 30th wedding anniversary, guys, for their very generous donations to the show. Very much appreciated. Thank you. I also have a belated Father's Day shout out for one of our viewers. He's a guy from Navan in Ireland, I think. His name is Liam Sherry. Liam, your daughter's been in touch. What a fantastic daughter she must be. So I'll give you a shout out on the show. So Liam, I hope you had a fantastic Father's Day, mate, and thanks for all your kind comments towards the Canary Room. Grab yourself a cuppa, everyone, sit back, and as always, enjoy the show. So we're coming towards the end of June, and for the fifes, certainly in the Canary Room, it's time to really start to think about winding the season down. So the fifes have been breeding since early March, and what we're starting to see is it's just a slowing down with them. And, you know, you've seen a couple of feathers on the floor, which would indicate that some of the hens are starting to go into a molt. So what I've done is I've left some of the cock birds with them. Now, for some of these hens, it will be their second round, the second sort of proper round with chicks. They may have laid another round of eggs, but they haven't been fertile. And what I am going to do, because it's late in the day and there is a chance that hens will go into the molt, I'm going to leave the cock birds with them. Now, I've set a number of nests at the same time because if I need to move either young or eggs around, you know, it's really good to have other eggs that are due and nests that are due at the same time. So I've done that. That's already paid dividends because I had a hen who was on 4 full eggs, walk off them at 11 days. So I've set them under another hen who's due to hatch at the same time. So hopefully, although the eggs were cold, hopefully they'll be okay. So I've got pairs in the cages behind me at the moment. What I've also got is a number of empty cages. Throughout July and August, I'll do the first selection of the show team. We are uncertain in the UK at the moment as to whether and how many shows will take place. Our show season in the UK is sort of October, November, December, and then we do have some shows in January, although normally I finish sort of the beginning of December showing. So we've had the Parrot Society show at Stafford, which was due to take place the first weekend in October. That has been cancelled, not surprisingly. The North Staffs and South Cheshire Five Fancy Canary Club you had their show there. Now I understand they're still going to have a show, or certainly it's their intention to, assuming they're able to within government guidelines. So I'll do that selection of birds, and then I'll move them over into these single cages. So by the end of July, all the cages on this wall will be empty. I'll give them a good clean down, and then I'll start the selection process of the show team. The show team will consist of birds that I'll keep, but I won't keep them all. And the non-show team will also consist of birds that I'll keep, and that will be because they have a key part to play in the formation and the development of the lines as we move forward. So if we have a look here around, you can see that we've got the blue cock with a clear buff hen now. We've got the clear buff hen with the variegated yellow cock. We've got a buff hen with a clear yellow cock. We've got the old hen up in the corner with her son. We've got another clear yellow cock and a lightly marked buff hen. So they're all paired up. We've got a number of nests due this week. So I think we've got 3 or 4 nests due this week. We've got a nest due today, which has just started to chip out. We've got 1 out so far. So, you know, Fife-wise, it's been. I'm on track to have my best ever season with the Fifes, which is good. So, very much here, you know, the beginning of the end of the breeding season. So, as I say, really looking for birds to have laid by the end of June. So I'm setting nests at the end of June, and every indication, I think. There's a couple of hens that I've set today. There's a couple of hens who are building up who haven't laid, but I anticipate they'll lay in the next couple of days or so. So we'll be on track to achieve that. So that's our pairings. That's our sort of progress on the breeding season as we bring it to a close with the Canaries. Different kettle of fish with the British Finches, as we'll see a little bit later on in the Redpoll Diaries. So what I may do is keep certainly the mosaics, who are currently rearing a fife and a couple of Siberian goldfinches for me. I may well try and keep them going just in case I need them as fosters. As we bring the season to a close, I noticed a couple of the hens. I'd sort of put them down to have a second round, and I noticed a couple of them were not really that interested. One or two of them built up, but no indication that they were going to lay. So I have put them in a double breeder. I'll move eventually all of the hens into flight cages, and then I'll start a selection on which are the hen birds that I'm going to keep. What I found really interesting this year is the dominance of the heavily variegated buff hen. Now, we're on her 3rd round. I've left the cock with her this round, and she's got 3 full eggs. The dominance of her as a bird in the fife lines in this Canary Room she has a hen who is in with the cinnamon cock. She's had hens or grandchildren who have been with the clear birds. Her grandson is the clear buff cock who's gone over the 6-7 clear yellow hens. So I can trace all of the birds back really to that one hen. This will be her last breeding year, and she will see her days out in the Canary Room. So at the end of the breeding season, I'll try and accommodate her in a nice double breeding cage, give her plenty of things, and see if we can't overwinter her successfully. But what's been really interesting is to see how that bird has, as I say, peppered through the different lines in the Canary Room. And when I look at the young that have come down, particularly well, in the clears and in the darks, and some of the birds that have come out of the allied to white cock bird, there's some real quality there. So all of the lines have a connection through them, which is fantastic. You know, that's really where you want to be in building that line moving forward. It's been a very interesting time with the Redpolls over the last few months. You know, ups and downs. I think inevitably, as there are with British birds, or certainly native finches, and you know, I take a degree of comfort that it's not just me who's had some challenges, but you know, fanciers who've kept Redpolls for a far longer time than I have also had the odd challenge or so. So we have got some Redpoll chicks out of our pied hen and our normal cock, so those chicks will be split for pied. We had 4 originally. We got 3 out of the nest, and then unfortunately we lost one as it had come out of the nest, and the parents are still feeding these 2 chicks, which is excellent. The chicks are really noisy, and the hen has built up and she's laid again, which is great news. Now I've seen her and the cock mate, so all being well, fingers crossed, they'll be full. With our silver hen, she hatched again, didn't show any real inclination of feeding. Again, she's first year for her, and that can be the case at times. So I topped the birds up, but you can see, looked like again a touch of black spot with them. Now I am using grog. I'm using grog in the egg food. I can only assume she hasn't taken enough egg food in the run up. So what I've done is I've swapped the cock over. I'm going to let her go again, but I've put a different cock in. To start with, they fought like cat and dog. They are no longer fighting, and they're starting to sort of be okay with each other now. She hasn't built up again yet, but hopefully she will in the next few days. I did a similar thing with the one of the pairs of Isabels. So I had an Isabel hen and a normal cock. Weren't doing anything, and I had a spare Isabel cock, so I took the normal cock away and I replaced him with the Isabel cock again to start with. Little bit of fighting, and then, well, you know, they say patience is a virtue, and I tried to show a tremendous amount of patience to capture the Isabel Redpolls mating. You can see I missed it here. I was in the Canary Room in the week just before the lights went out. I missed it for a second time, and then I managed to capture on film. They're very quick. I managed to capture on film them mating twice, which was, fantastic news. Even better news, they've laid their first egg today, which is great. So if I can get a few more out of the split pied, and if I can get a couple out of the Isabel, then, we've got some birds to carry on for next year with the Redpolls. So that we'll keep everything crossed for that. But lovely kind words from everybody about the Redpoll diaries, and I was very happy to be able to post a picture of them on the Natives and Norwich site earlier in the week. So that's our polls, our goldfinches. Well, an interesting story with the goldfinches, to be fair. The pea-throats have built up a lovely nest, but no sign of eggs. Now, I don't know whether the hen may have laid and the cock has got to them before I've checked them in the morning. That's a possibility. I just don't know about that. But we'll persevere. It's still end of June, so that we may get something in July, we may get something in August. Weather's been crazy. More on that a bit later on. The Siberians, you'll remember that we last time round we had, I think, 5 full eggs. We had 3 under the Siberian, we had 2 under the Agat mosaic. I came in, you can see, I think in this footage here, the Siberian hen had hatched one of the eggs, but it was clear that, someone, either the cock or the hen, was interfering. One of the things I've noticed about the Siberian young is that they stay very low in the nest, unlike fifes. So one or other was interfering. So I took the other egg away. One of the eggs had been launched out of the nest, so there was 1 full egg, a chick, but it had been quite badly pecked. So I put it underneath the Agat mosaics, and it didn't make the night, unfortunately. But another Siberian hatched, so we have 4 in total. Again, one of those other young, I've been helping, I've been topping up every sort of 3 hours during the day. One of the other young didn't make it, but we've still got 2 now. I've rung one of them. One of them looks like it's going to be a Umo, so that will be split for Lutino. The other one looks like it's going to be a Lutino. Interesting just to see how they develop. I've rung one of them. Siberians, I'm very happy with them as a bird. We've got a little one out of the nest, as we can see on the footage here, being well fed by the fife hen. It's a critical time for it though, so we need to be mindful of that. I haven't seen it feeding itself yet. I have seen the Redpolls starting to pick up, but I haven't seen the Siberian picking up as yet. So it's a critical time for it, but the fife hen, as you can see in the footage, has been feeding it and bringing it on. As a look out of shot now, I can see that the Agat mosaic, red Agat mosaic, is feeding one of the Siberians as well. There's a fife in there too, so we'll keep our fingers crossed for those. We'll see how we get on with them over the weeks ahead. But the Siberians have really caught me this year. Really pleased. First year I've ever kept them, and they've really captured the imagination with me. So I've got what I think is another hen on her own. So what I'll look to do with her, obviously successfully overwinter her is the first thing, as it will be with all of the goldfinches and the British birds, and of course the canaries. And then for next year I'll look to see what I can do. As I say, I've not seen the Siberian young feed itself. I'm just looking at it out of the corner of my eye, and it's just taking some soak seed out of the egg drawer. So hopefully that's a good sign. If I can start to see that pick up, that will be really good. I want to take it away, when I know that it is feeding itself consistently. So that's a good thing. So yeah, Siberians, all of the goldfinches really, they are hard work, but if you just look at them here, they're absolutely stunning bird. The agats and the borders have been a real fabulous addition to the Canary Room this year, and delighted with what they've produced. There's 3 agat eggs which are full, which are due to hatch today. They haven't hatched as yet, and there's another 2 which I think are full under another hen. So we'll end up with sort of 6 or 8, hopefully, of the agat mosaics this year. We'll see them in Bird of the Week coming up next. We'll see one of them anyway. One of the things that I really like about them is the ability to visual sex them, which is good. So they're very much staying in the Canary Room for next year. The boarders, they will also be staying. The hen, just see behind me, is on the nest. She is on 5 eggs. It looks like only 3 of them are full this time. Now, she laid 6 in the second round and they were all full. 5 hatched and we got 4. But it looks like there's only 3 full this time, so they're due in a week. So they're very much staying. Very good friend of the show, good friend of mine now, Paul Gilchrist, has sent some footage over here. We can have a look at it at his Norwich. So some of his young Norwich that he's bred this year, and even though they're still in nest feather, you can see the quality of them. I'm looking to add some Norwich into the room. We didn't have any success with them this year. I'm looking to see whether I can't bring some more in for next year. So that will be part of the plan, and we've got another trip to Julian's Canary Bird Room planned when we're able to, a little bit later in the year, and I'm hoping to pick up some red, black, grey wings too. So we'll have to make some room in the Canary Room. So I think the Scotch that we had, they will probably go, and we'll see how many poles that we breed and then that we're able to keep. But there'll be plenty of room, I'm sure. So boarders, they're doing great. The young are looking good. The agat mosaics, well, let's take a look at them now. It's time for Bird of the Week. So it's time for Bird of the Week. We've got in the cage an agat mosaic cock. It's not been in the cage before, so it's not particularly showing itself well, but it's one of the things I like about these birds, as well as the sort of the markings on them, is the ability to sex them, and I think that is really useful. They've got a role to play in the Canary Room. They're here by their own rights, but they've got a role to play in here as well, which they seem to be doing quite well. Touch wood with the Siberians. So our first Bird of the Week is a red agat mosaic cockbird. Our second Bird of the Week is it's a fife. It's a self-green buff hen. It's the full sister of the heavily variegated yellow cock that we saw a couple of episodes ago, and I did an updated video of that on YouTube. Pretty sure it's a hen just by its sort of markings down its flanks and also its coloration. Similar, yellows and buffs, by their very nature, buffs look like they have a broader feather on them. So not necessarily the same style as her brother, but a very nice bird, most definitely a keeper. So we'll see how she molts out, but certainly the way she's bred, leads me to conclude that she'll be staying in the Canary Room. Whether she makes the show team or not, time will tell. As our second Bird of the Week, it is a self-green buff hen. So there's our Bird of the Weeks this week. We'll see how they develop over the course of the weeks and months ahead, and certainly through the molt. I mentioned at the very outset of this show the biblical weather that we had. I'll share with you some footage now of the view from my bedroom window, which was, you can see it was a couple of Saturdays ago, and it was, the heavens opened, the thunder and lightning were incredible, and I was terrified the next morning. Terrified when I came into the shed, real trepidation to see what was there. But fortunately, everything was okay, and as a consequence, we didn't lose any birds, which I was blessed about. Quick check-in with the cinnamons. You'll remember last time we were hand rearing one. You'll be able to see him. He's on the floor there. The clear that was with it didn't make it, which I think, as I said at the time, is always the risk. The variegated hen next to her, she hatched 3 of her own chicks. She's got a variegated in there from another nest, and a clear in there for another nest, so she's rearing 5 for me at the moment. The heavily variegated yellow hen has mated up again with the cinnamon. She's built up again. It looks like this hen in here, the variegated, looks to mate again, so we'll have maybe a final flourish with the cinnamons. I have, you'll notice the white is now separated off. It laid 2 eggs. Pleased to say one of them's full, possibly 2, but one of them's definitely full. That's due to hatch this week, so that's under another hen at the moment, so we may end up with an allied or a fawn there as well. So we'll see, but that's very much our cinnamons. Next couple of weeks really is all about bringing the canary breeding season to a close, and we'll try and do that as sort of smoothly as we possibly can, although it's the Canary Room, so nothing ever goes smooth, does it? I'm sure there'll be some kind of drama still to come in there. So without further ado now, last part of the show, it's time for question time. So it is an epic question time. I called out for questions on Facebook, and delighted with the response. Thanks everyone. I will work my way through them all. First question comes in from Dave Coughlin. Dave is the admin of Natives in Norwich, and Dave says, Matt, what's your view on air sac mites in canaries? I find it's a hard condition to cure. A bird can live and breed with it, but personally some birds get scarring from them even when mites are treated. Love to hear your thoughts. Good question, Dave. I've got some experience of it in the Canary Room. I've got the green cock, the green buff cock, anchor bird. Looks like it might have air sac mite, and there's a couple of things to sort of look for and distinguish, because it could also be a fungal infection. So there's a sort of coughing and sort of moving forward of them. Like yourself, Dave, mixed results at treating it. I don't know that the bird is ever the same bird again, but it doesn't seem to impact. It certainly hasn't impacted the fertility of this bird. So numerous different treatments. A good friend of mine, Shane, has said, having very kindly sent some nest pans and the likes, he's going to send me some multi-purpose antibiotics to run through the bird just to see if we can't treat it. Like you say, Dave, it's a tricky one. You never like to see birds doing that. The cock was singing earlier on, so it's not having a real impact in his health. Thank you for your question. And if you haven't checked out Natives of Norwich, and I know I've given it a couple of plugs on the show, do have a look at it, because it's it's a really good Facebook page, really good bunch of guys on there. Next one comes in from Rob Elkin, a fan of the show. Rob, if you Rob? No, I'm Matt. Says, hi Matt, if you had a hen on a nest of clear eggs, what would you do? I've heard years ago some people let them sit and give her a rest in between nests. Is this a good idea? Yes, I guess is the short answer to that, Rob. I've done it a number of times in the Canary Room. I like, as I said a couple of times, I like to set hens together in case anything goes wrong and you can move young around. I've also I've let birds sit empty eggs knowing that they're empty, and I've done that for two reasons. First, as you suggest, is to give them a rest, just give them a break. It can be that they're not quite ready. Certainly first year hens, it can be that they're not quite sexually mature enough, so if you give them that cycle first off, second time round, more often than not you'll have better luck. It can depend on whether you're running a cock with multiple hens as well. That can have an impact on it. But very happy to let a hen sit. The other upside of letting a hen sit on empty eggs is that if you do have any issues, you can pop the eggs under there and she will rear the young. So thanks for the question, Rob. Next question's in from Graham Parker. I know pairing a white ground to a white ground is a no-no. However, is it okay to pair a white with a clear that has a white parent? Absolutely, Graham. And that's what I would look for. What you're looking for in white ground. And this year I didn't do it. And we'll see. What you're looking for in your white ground birds is pure white. You don't want any yellow tinges in them. We've got a couple of white grounds on the stick. It's a little bit early to see if there's any yellow tinges. They're out of very good, strong coloured yellow hens. The risk is that there will be some yellow tinges in there. The reason I wanted to do that was, both of those hens had decent necks on them, and I thought that's what the cock needed. Whereas I've got some good buffs with good necks, but I thought the cock needed that there. So yeah, I will look for the birds that are bred out of the white ground cock birds, and I'll look to keep those in the white line. They will be inevitably, some of them will be a little bit down on colour. So absolutely, Graham, that's exactly what I would do. Oliver Crowther messages the show. Thanks for your message, Oliver. He says, do you ever consider trying to breed mules with your Redpolls or Goldfinches? Yes, I have. I have considered it. I've tried it. I've not succeeded yet. With the Redpolls, I ran them with a couple of the Scotch fancy hens, had some eggs, but they were empty. So I've not messed around with those, to be honest. With the Goldfinches, yes, I will at some stage. It won't be now. What I want to do is straight breed them. I do know some fanciers sort of give a first round with the Canary and then put the cock Goldfinch in to the hen Goldfinch. I haven't done that this year. I just didn't want to mess them around. So first year in, but as I develop that line of Goldfinches over the next couple of seasons, then yes, I'm told that mules make very good parent rearers. So I absolutely will do that, Oliver. That's the intention moving forward. Brian Lahori is our next question. Hiya, Matt. I have 6 24-inch cages all linked together to form a large flight cage and access to an outside small aviary flight section. This houses 3 hens, 1 cocks and 3 chicks in the nest at present. I also have some 18-inch and 12-inch cages on a separate wall where I have 1 cock in a cage on its own, and I plan to put the chicks in another couple to fledge when the breeding season is over. Can all the birds go in one large flight aviary together? Will this cause any issues? With the space you've got, Brian, you'll probably be okay. I try and avoid housing cockbirds together over winter, just because you don't want them to bicker. You're overwintering, really. You need to look at overwintering as preparing for the next breeding season. So you want to give them as few distractions as possible. There's a lot of room that you talk about there, so they should be okay. Just watch the young chicks, because inevitably there'll be a cockbird in there. Just watch that with the old cockbird. There's plenty of room. I know some people do house cockbirds together and have no problem. I've done it in the past. I just don't like the squabbles. Birds can get very, very territorially, although you've got plenty of space for them. So I would say you'll probably be okay, but be mindful about housing cocks together. Message in from Liam Paul Russell. Hi Matt, first year with any birds since I gave them up 24 years ago. Tips on sexing young canaries and telling a buff youngster from a yellow would be welcome. I can tell them apart when adult, but they all look like buffs to me. Well, Liam, yeah, you're not alone. I think the greens are very easy to tell a yellow and a buff apart, and there's different colours on them, and I can, if we have a look here, bird of the week this week, we have another look at her. She's obviously going to be a buff bird. I say her, if you look at the lacings down the flank, they look like they're a continuous line, so that looks to me like she's going to be a buff bird. If we have a look at her brother, we've got him in a cage here. He's a yellow bird, darker in feather, very much, you can sort of see the kind of the green, the bright green coming through. So with the darks, I think it's relatively straightforward. With the clears, it's a little bit more difficult, because the clear yellow hens will look very similar to the clear buff cocks. The clear yellow cocks are relatively easy, I think, because they're almost sort of, certainly I find now, they're almost orangey, and you can sort of tell. But the clear yellow hens, I think, and the clear buff cocks are the ones that I think are difficult to sex or tell apart, because, as I say, the clear yellow hens and the clear buff cocks look very, very similar. Clear buff hens, certainly with the line I've got, they are very pale in colour and pretty obvious. I think that they'll be clear buff hens. I hope that helps. I mean, when it comes to sexing birds, as everyone who watches the show will know, normally I get it right, but I got it wrong twice with two birds I thought were cocks earlier this year. So a question in from Sean Kelly. So thanks, Liam, for your question. A question in from Sean. If you were to start from the beginning or after a short break with canaries, how would you go about breeding a line of birds? It's a great question. Sean. I think one of the things I'd start with getting the best birds I possibly could, getting the best quality birds I possibly could. I'd go to a source where I knew I'd be able to go back. I've been very fortunate with built a good friendship with Gerald over the last sort of 15, 16, nearly 20 years now, since I've been keeping fifes, and having gone there after year 2, I've had birds, probably the odd bird, sometimes more than the odd bird every year. So very fortunate in being able to go back to the original source. I have bought the occasional outcrossing just to keep things keep things fresh. Key for me, think about the ratio of cocks to hens. You want to get a cockbird over a few hens in the first year, so you can see what's behind him, so you can see if he's producing quality. You also need good hens to produce quality, though. So, you can't just put cocks over mediocre hens and expect everything to be really good. So, one of the things this year in the Canary Room with the ticked buff cock that we had, we ran him over 6 or 7 hens in the end. And, there's been some real quality youngsters that have come out. So that's good. I know he's producing the goods, which is important. Really, it's about families of birds. So it's about establishing a family of birds and building your lines around those families. As I mentioned earlier in the show, the heavily variegated buff hen has blood in a large number of the birds in the Canary Room. So all of the lines, the dark line, the cinnamon line, the clear lines, the allied to white lines have all got birds in them that are bred down from her. So final thing on it is patience. You know, it will take you. Use your years wisely. You know, if I was to drop out of the hobby now and come back, I'd obviously have to come back in as a champion. And, you know, it would take a couple of years to get a line of birds going. But it's very, very doable. Build around families, you know, cock to a couple of hens to start with, see what comes out, and then line breed right the way through. This year I've done some inbreeding. I do it, you know, occasionally, just to sort of cement a line. And the birds, the two dark birds that we've seen today from Bird of the Week are you know, an outcome of that inbreeding program. So, and they've got real quality. What I'm going to have to do next year is find birds that are related to them. Well, I've already got those in the shed, so that won't be too much of an issue. Thanks for the question. A couple of questions from Debbie Stout. Couple from the rolled over from the previous episode. First one is, are there things we can do, feed, caging, etc., to prolong the hen's second nest? This year my hens began their second nests about right. They waited for their first chicks to be out of the nest, but I would have preferred them to wait one more week. I think, Debbie, it's, you know, the urge to go back to nest is big. And particularly because we're feeding the hens, you know, egg food and a variety of different things to keep them going and feeding the young that are in the nest. You know, we're getting them fitter and fitter. It's very, very difficult to prolong. So, and I'm with you though. Sometimes they look to go down. Look, they want to go down quicker than you want them to. There's a chance, really, isn't there? Because if you don't introduce the cock, or if you've got a pair together, you know, you don't want to miss that second round from a fertility point of view. So, and I wouldn't suggest that you pull back on any of the egg food, Debbie, because they need that to feed the young. So, I think, you know, make sure you're not giving them too much. Because, you know, they can get overfit and be quick to go back to nest. Second point from Debbie, I seem to remember you mentioned in an earlier episode that you return the eggs to the hen in the evening. Do you make a point of putting eggs back under the hens to begin incubation in the evening, or was that just when to fit in with work? It was, Debbie, a combination of things. So it was to fit in with work. So setting the eggs the night before, you know, sometimes I'd set them on 3 eggs. Sometimes I'd set them on 4 eggs, and basically what that meant was, as the egg was laid in the morning, they'd all have a chance of hatching at the same time. I like to. It's just a personal preference, really. I don't think there's any science behind it. It probably just fitted in with my work-life balance. And the final question: what is the first question comment of a non-canary person when they see your shed? Are they budgies? Most people say, "Oh, you've got budgies," and I'm like, "They're not budgies, they're canaries." Nothing against budgies, but they're most definitely canaries. Or "What's in that?" Or "Oh my God, really? That's weird." A whole series of comments that you'd expect. And finally, from Debbie, is there a canary person that you haven't met that you would love to talk to? There is. It is a man who's known to many of you. It's a gentleman by the name of Phil Warren, a very, very successful and well-renowned borderman. And, you know, Phil has had a tremendous amount of success on the show bench with his borders, and consistently consistently over decades, and that's real stockmanship. So I would love to meet Phil. I'd love to do a special episode with Phil. We are friends on Facebook, but I don't really know him, so I think the special episode will probably have to wait, unless anybody watching the show knows Phil and they want to suggest it to him. That would be great. Thanks for the questions, Debbie. Next question comes in from Shamir. So Shamir, does the male need to be singing in order to mate? Got a male that came out of the molt and not singing. Generally speaking, no, he doesn't. He doesn't need to be singing to mate. Generally speaking, that's how he attracts the female, though. So unless you have another cock bird that is singing and will get the female to squat, as you remember we did with the white cock and a hen earlier in the season. Hens will generally squat when they hear a male singing, but he doesn't have to be singing to mate. A question from Ali: how to increase fertility rates with goldfinches? Wow, Ali, I'm relatively new to keeping goldfinches. So what I've done is I've made sure they've got egg food, they've got soak seed. I've a very good friend who gives me some really sound advice on the goldfinches, called Tony, and Tony was talking earlier this week about bee pollen and giving that in the egg food, and that seems to be conditioning them and bringing them on. So it isn't. I can't take the credit, Ali, for that advice, I'm afraid. But very best of luck with them. Patience again with certainly with any of the native birds. They do take time to come into condition. Next question comes in from Glenn Benson. When to call it an end to the breeding season to let birds properly molt out and let this year young mature for next breeding year? My breeding season, as I've said a couple of times, Glenn, end of June is when I look to set the last nests. So you've got young hatching out in July. They'll still be then in the nest in August, which is far from ideal, to be honest. From their benefit, and also from my own benefit, it makes the season an awfully long time. But it is the end of June that I'll set the last nests. You want the birds, the birds now are starting to break into a molt. I'm giving them baths. I can see sort of feathers, increasing number of feathers as I come into the Canary Room. So end of June, really, I'll wrap it up with the canaries. The reason I've kept it till the end of June this year, normally I have chicks hatch and by the end of June I'm done. The reason I've kept it a little bit longer is because of the goldfinches and some of the British finches, just in case I need a hand to rear them. So very best of luck, Glenn. Next question comes in from Jason Green. Hi Matt, excellent show. Thanks, Jason. What's your view on eliminating black spot? Black spot is really, really difficult to get rid of, and I don't think that you can eliminate it. That's a personal view. I think you can manage it. I think the only way you can eliminate it from the canary from your room is to identify the birds that have got black spot or are carrying black spot and move them out of the stud. I think that's the only way that you'll eliminate it. Be mindful about housing lots of birds together, because they will pass it on potentially. Manage, I think, is the only thing to say on that. And as you know, I use grog, and even that. Certainly with the Redpolls, it hasn't had, either they've not taken enough of it in, but it hasn't had the impact that I would have hoped it would have done this year. So it's a real difficult one, black spot. I know. It can be really soul destroying when you get chicks out and then you see that black spot on them, and you almost know that you're going to lose them. So I don't think, as I say, you can eliminate it. I think it's a question of managing it. That's our final question. Thanks very much, everyone, for getting in touch with the show. That's all we've got time for this week. We'll keep everything crossed in the Canary Room for the weeks ahead. We'll be back in a couple of weeks' time with episode 13 of the show. I have made some arrangements as well to go back on the road. So we've got 2, possibly 3 episodes on the road that we'll be filming just as soon as lockdown in the UK has been lifted and we're able to. Thanks to everybody who's donated to the show. If you've enjoyed it and you're able to, the donate button's on our homepage. It's very much appreciated. Until next time, everyone, take care.